Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Silver Spring. My name is Carol Hamilton, and I'm this morning's worship associate. My pronouns are she and her. Whether you're joining us in the sanctuary or on Zoom, I'm so glad that you've joined us here today. I'd like to welcome all of our guests or visitors in the congregation today. Linda Barrett is our welcoming captain. Linda's waving in the back, and is here to help answer your questions about our congregation. The great nonviolent organizer, Bayard Rustin, famously said, "We need in every community a group of angelic troublemakers." This profound statement encapsulates the essence of the transformational power held by individuals who challenge societal norms and fight for justice. What does this mean for us as Unitarian Universalists of all ages on this holiday weekend celebrating the civil rights movement and our ongoing work for equity? Today's service will invite us all to reflect on how we are called to be holy troublemakers. This is an all ages service, and our nursery is open for ages 6 months to 5 years. And now it is time to greet one another. We will begin by greeting those on Zoom. Those in the sanctuary, turn to the camera on your right and wave to those joining us virtually. And now if you're joining us on Zoom, it's your turn. Please turn on your camera and wave so that those in the sanctuary can see you. And if you're on Zoom, I invite you to greet one another in the chat while those of us here in person get up and greet our neighbors around the sanctuary. In a minute or two, the music will start, and that's our cue to go back to our seats and sing the opening song. The words to the hymns will all be on your screen.
Somebody's calling my name. Hush, hush. Somebody's calling my name. Hush, hush. Somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do? Sounds like freedom. Sounds like a freedom. Somebody's calling my name. Oh, sounds like freedom. Somebody's calling my name. Sounds like freedom. Somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? Shall I do? Sounds like justice. Sounds like a justice. Somebody's calling my name. Oh, sounds like justice. Somebody's calling my name. Sounds like a justice. Somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? Shall I do? Let's bring this one down here. Soon one morning, death comes creeping in my room. Oh, doom. One morning, death comes creeping in my room. Soon one morning, death comes a creeping in my room. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? Shall Back to Hush. Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Oh, hush, somebody's calling my name. Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? Shall I do?
We have come here today to remember what some are intent on making us forget, to remember those who fought to end segregation, to remember those who marched to counter prejudice and oppression, to remember a movement filled with peace and hope, to remember folks with promise and a dream, to remember those whose voices rang out for justice and freedom. All these things we remember and honor this weekend, where we celebrate the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Bayard Rustin, and the work for civil rights, and lives well lived in service to all. Good morning, everyone. I am the Reverend Caitlin Cotter Coilberg. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am your minister of spiritual growth. It's now time to light our chalice, symbol of our free faith, and reaffirm our congregational commitment. As Carol Hamilton lights our chalice, please join me in saying the words on your screen. May this light warm our hearts with love and caring and guide us in the ways of truth. As we gather here for worship, we pledge ourselves to the endless search for truth, to the right of each to believe as mind, heart, and conscience dictate, to accept the responsibilities this freedom commands, and to implement our belief in the essential worth and dignity of every human being. So last week, our children and youth began a new curriculum, building off the work they've been doing in their superhero academy. This new curriculum is called Holy Troublemakers and Unlikely Saints. And it is inspired by an amazing Quaker man named Bayard Rustin. Who here knows who Bayard Rustin is? Nice, yes. Have you seen the new documentaries about him? Yeah? I haven't managed to watch it yet. I'm really excited about it. Or anyone else just like hung out with Quakers a lot and they talked about Bayard Rustin? Yes. Yeah, I went to Quaker colleges and we were like all about Bayard Rustin. Yes. Kids, if you were here last week and went to our Holy Troublemakers lesson, we talked about him a lot. The whole premise of the curriculum we're doing is about real-world superheroes, people of faith who made a difference. And it's based on his famous quote that we need in every community a group of angelic troublemakers, folks committed to direct nonviolent action to change unfair and unjust laws. So I noticed a few hands didn't go up. Just to quick encapsulate, Bayard Rustin was a Black gay man who spent his life working for justice. He credited his faith and his grandparents for the values that inspired him. And while working to end segregation, Bayard went to India to study nonviolence with the followers of Mahatma Gandhi, who believed peaceful actions such as sit-ins, marches, and boycotts were a powerful way to change the world. When he came back to the U.S., he brought these lessons to the leaders of the civil rights movement. He became a trusted advisor to the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and was the organizer of the March on Washington, where Dr. King gave his famous speech that began, yeah. Now, we often don't read about Bayard Rustin in our history books because he was often forced into the background for being gay. Boo. Now, Bayard Rustin, towards the end of his life, told a story about when he was a young man. You know, often we have that kind of that moment when things clicked into place and we got like really dedicated to things. So this is his story of that moment. He was a young man. He was getting on a bus in the South during the time of segregation. Because when in the buses in South during segregation, what did you have to do if you were a black man and you got on a bus? Could you sit in the front? No. Where'd you have to go? Right. So he got on the bus. He started to go towards the back, as the law said he had to do, and this white child at the front of the bus grabbed his necktie, and the white child's white mother said not to touch him and called him by a racial slur. Bayard Rustin paused then. He decided in that moment that if he just went to the back of the bus, that white kid might think that he wanted to sit in the back of the bus, that he was okay with the way he was being treated and the word his mother had just said. He decided it was an educational moment and that he was going to be arrested instead of meekly doing what he was told. And then in his own words, it occurred to me shortly after that it was an absolute necessity for me to declare homosexuality, because if I didn't, I was a part of the prejudice. He said, I was aiding and abetting the prejudice that was a part of the effort to destroy me. He believed in social dislocation and creative trouble. Being openly gay meant that he was pushed out of the spotlight again and again, that even as he taught strategy to the leaders of the spotlight, created things like the March on Washington, he was intentionally made invisible. But for him, being in the closet was never an option. Even though on the time, like, being out of the closet was super dangerous, right? Like, it was illegal to, like, do gay stuff, right? Just like it was illegal to be a black person sitting in the front of the bus in the South. For him, pretending to be anything other than himself was not okay. He believed in a version of peace that was about upsetting a status quo based on violence. Not a version of peace, right, that's everybody being chill about things that aren't okay, but a version of peace that's about working together, refusing to sit down and shut up, right? Being trouble. Being trouble, being an angelic troublemaker. And Bayard Rustin spent his whole life helping others to become angelic troublemakers for justice and peace all around the world. We honor him and tell his story as a reminder that our heroes everywhere, often behind the scenes, that work for justice can look like many things, and that we are successful when we stay close to our values. Bayard Rustin's Quaker values led him to a life of living peace and deep and world-changing ways. I wonder how living your Unitarian Universalist values will lead you, how love will guide you, and how you will find space in your life to let love and joy and trouble in.
voice still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing. In storm and rain, sorrow and pain, still will remain singing, calming my fears, quenching my tears, through all the years, singing, voice still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing. In storm and rain, sorrow and pain, still will remain singing, calming my fears, quenching my tears, through all the years, singing.
I offer you this prayer by the Reverend Viola Abbott. Let us open our hearts, still our minds, and enter a time of prayer. Let us call forth and hold in our hearts the stories of all who have come before us, the memories of those who are with us today, and the hope for tomorrow and all of those who will come after us. Let us be thankful for opportunities for healing, forgiveness, and reconciliation, while knowing that we can never, should never, forget what it has brought us here today. Let us be glad that voice has not only been given to those whose sorrow and pain were their companions in this faith, but that the stories told by those voices have been received with a goal of redemption and understanding. Let us call upon that light which shines in each of us to give us the strength to walk together into the future and do the work that is necessary and which does not end here today. Let us have the wisdom to lovingly have the conversations we need to have with each other, that we must have with each other, in order to grow this faith in radical love and inclusion. Amen. And this prayer was written as part of the promise and the practice, part of the ongoing work of anti-racism within Unitarian Universalism, which is, of course, also about confronting the racism that we found in Unitarian Universalism. Now we have a responsive reading.
So please join me in a responsive reading. I will read the first part that is in regular type, and then you will read the part that is in italics. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied to a single garment of destiny. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. There are sometimes some things in our social system to which all of us ought to be maladjusted. We must evolve for all human conflict a method which rejects revenge, aggression, and retaliation. The foundation of such a method is love. Before it is too late, we must narrow the gaping chasm between our proclamations of peace and our lowly deeds which precipitate and perpetuate war. One day, we must come to see that peace is not merely a distant goal that we seek, but a means by which to arrive at that goal. We must pursue peaceful ends through peaceful means. We shall hear out the mountain of despair Thank you.
So as I said, our kids recently started a new curriculum here at UUCSS out in their fellowship building, their superhero hangout. And we started this new curriculum because as much fun as it is to talk about superheroes, we realized that what we really need when we think about how we are centering love and listening to the call of love is something else. That what we need is troublemakers, right? What Bayard Rustin called, as we've mentioned a few times, angelic troublemakers, what our new curriculum calls holy troublemakers, folks willing to make what John Lewis called good trouble, right? I love good trouble, and I love this term, holy troublemakers, because it leaves so much room for humor, room for mistakes, room for trying again when we didn't quite make enough trouble the first time. And room for lots of us to be accomplices and active agents of trouble. Accomplices is a term that one of my mentors, the late great Alandria Williams, who worked for a long time at the Highlander Center where Rosa Parks trained, he said to white UUs, to let go of claiming to be an ally and strive to do the work of being an accomplice instead. I love that. I love that in part because it sounds a bit fun, right? Being an accomplice, like we're part of a heist film working to right injustice in creative and unexpected ways, maybe with a theme song or two playing behind us, right? It's a good reminder that the work of kind of taking on injustice is hard and dangerous, but also fun and rewarding and joyful. That those who came before us had fun and were joyful. Right? When you see Hollywood portrayals of the civil rights movement, it's all very stern and sepia-toned, right? But nobody lives in sepia tones. We live in color. We forget that Reverend Dr. King lived not long ago, that he loved to go swimming, and that he was a huge Star Trek nerd. Right? Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King loved Star Trek. He did not live a life in black and white or sepia tones. He lived in color. And every anti-racist, anti-oppression activist I've ever known, everyone I've known who has decided to commit their life to justice has been a person committed to joy and sacred silliness as well. And that's true for so many of the greats we like to talk about. Like the theologian Howard Thurman watched the World Series with Dr. King. I just love that. These two greats sat around a TV set watching the World Series together. They loved Star Trek. They loved baseball. Dr. Thurman taught himself the clarinet late in life just for fun. And he collected penguin figurines just because he liked them. Right? One of the great justice-centered Unitarian Universalist theologians of the 20th century, James Luther Adams, loved kung fu movies. Joy has to be a part of the work we do and the lives we lead and the trouble we make together. Joy helps remind us to keep centering love and not hate, right? Joy is a practice that keeps us centered on love, and holy troublemaking comes from love. The anger that unites and drives us to do things better, to make good trouble, comes from love and not hate, right? And Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was quite the troublemaker himself, right? Sometimes he gets praised so much. We have a whole holiday about him, right? We've got a giant monument on the tidal basin now, right next to the FDR Memorial. Our society often seems to forget with these things how much he was hated, right? How much horrible stuff, how many lies were told about him during his life. He talked about peaceful ends by peaceful peaceful ends by peaceful means, but doing things with courage and integrity, the way Bayard Rustin, the way Mahatma Gandhi, and the way Quaker values and their deep, deep faith taught them to do, does not mean he was being compliant with systems of power or doing things that people liked, right? Reverend Aisha Anzano points out that as a society, we tell activists that their protests are too unruly, their demands too harsh, their voices too strident, their methods too stringent. We have decided as a society that there is one way to struggle for justice, and it's the way we like to imagine King struggled for justice, even though it's not the way he actually did. The Reverend Dr. King was considered by the FBI to be the most dangerous man in America. And he was far from alone in that work and far from alone in being considered dangerous, right? And this history matters. These stories of troublemaking matter because these are not problems that magically got fixed in the 60s, right? We didn't cure racism. There's a reason why the same kind of people who hated Dr. King in the 60s are trying to repress the true history of the civil rights movement now, are trying to repress the books about this even, right? Trying to convince young people that segregation wasn't that bad, that neither was the mass kidnapping and enslavement of folks from Africa, and neither was the genocide, the ongoing genocide against First Nations people. Right? And they want that to disappear because that violence is part of the ongoing struggle in this country. And that history is dangerous to those who want to keep profiting from inequity and inequality and white supremacy. They want us to think these were minor distractions and sepia-toned problems that were gracefully solved, not an ongoing struggle, not something that lives in each and all of us. Right? All of us. All of us. Sometimes the people profiting off inequity is folks on the left as well. One of the things Bayard Rustin taught us is that we have to do that internal work, that anti-racism is ongoing work because it's also about what we're dealing with on the inside. None of us are perfect. None of us get to rise smugly above the bigotry baked into our society and its rules and laws and violent capitalism. Capitalism is inherently violent. White folks, you are going to have racist thoughts and accidentally do little microaggressions and profit from white supremacy. What matters is your second thought, right? That first thought is what society is programmed into. That second thought, that's what we practice, that's what we cultivate, that's where we catch it, right? What matters is how you counteract that microaggression and improve your behavior and work to change the systems and apologize when you do harm. What matters is that you refuse to do what is harmful and comfortable. Be dangerous instead. Make trouble. Even within yourself. Act from love like Bayard Rustin, refusing to pretend that it was okay he was forced onto the back of the bus, refusing to go into the closet. Make trouble like Rosa Parks. Sometimes we think of Rosa Parks as this person who just sat down because she was tired on a bus. No, this was a deeply intelligent, well-trained, well-educated, well-connected woman who spent her life doing social justice, right? She was on the board of Planned Parenthood. She worked for a congressman. And in her memoir, she wrote, I wasn't tired when I sat down on that bus, except I was tired of injustice, basically. I don't have the quote right here exactly, right? She didn't sit down because she was tired physically. She sat down because she was tired of injustice. Like Howard Thurman and all of their friends and accomplices. And remember that this can look like a lot of things, right? You can be an accomplice to justice in a lot of ways. Sometimes this looks like being in the streets. Sometimes it looks like sitting down with the teenagers or looking after the toddlers or making the pies. Showing up at a school board meeting to oppose a book ban. Please show up at school board meetings and oppose book bans. Take bystander training and practice what to do when harm is happening in front of you. We have to practice these things. We have to be committed to never letting that white child on the bus think that racism, homophobia, or systemic injustice in any form is okay, even when they are the law, especially when injustice and forced ignorance is the law. We have to live into the legacy of the agents and accomplices of the 60s and beyond, knowing that they were hated, knowing that what they did was dangerous, knowing that their troublemaking was also joyful and full of song and solidarity and righteous mischief-making. We don't need superpowers to be agents of change, don't need to fly or shoot laser beams from our eyeballs to be angelic troublemakers. We have all we need, and we are enough, and we are ever becoming something we can only begin to imagine, accomplices and agents for a better tomorrow that lives far beyond ourselves. So now, I have a story for you. Are you ready? Shake it out. Ready? Story time. Okay. Our story begins at a meeting. We love meetings, right? This was a meeting at the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama in 1963, and Reverend Dr. King was asking for volunteers. Something ministers do a lot, right? Who will demonstrate with me tomorrow in a brave attempt to end segregation, he asked. Who will risk going to jail for the cause? Because remember, at this time in Birmingham, Alabama, if black people tried to go somewhere they weren't supposed to go, they could and did get arrested, beaten, and even killed. And in 1963, the holy troublemakers working against these unjust laws were up against a particularly scary dude named Bull Connor. You can hiss. He was the sheriff in Birmingham, and he was a very mean and violent person who did not like peaceful troublemakers. So, people were a little nervous about protesting, right? Often 400 people would show up to these meetings, but only 35 or so would volunteer to protest, and then not even all of those people would show up. So in this meeting, Dr. King was asking again, the struggle will be long, he said. We must stand up for our rights as human beings. Who will demonstrate with me and, if necessity, be ready to go to jail for it? Remember, he had just gone to jail for it. And required reading for everybody, letter from a Birmingham jail. Yes? Spend some time with it this week. Anyway, there was a pause, and then a whole group of people stood up. Someone gasped. All of the people who stood up were children. Do I have any children willing to stand up right now? Willing to come up here with me? Anyone willing to come up? You don't have to. Come on up. The adults told them to sit down, but they didn't. Right. Martin Luther King thanked the children and told them he appreciated the offer, but he couldn't ask them to go to jail. They still wouldn't sit down. They wanted to help. That night, Dr. King talked with a close group of friends about the events of the day. What are we going to do, he asked. The only volunteers we got were children. We can't have a protest with children. And one of his friends, his holy accomplices, pointed out that the kids might be young, but they weren't too young to go to segregated schools, or to be kept out of amusement parks, to be refused at restaurants, or as a group of teens from this congregation experienced, to be kicked out of a bowling alley. So they decided any kid old enough to join a church was old enough to march. So the kids started organizing. They brought in teenagers, college students, and other young adults. Are there any other youngish persons who are willing to come up now? The sheriff arrested them and put them in jail. And the next day, even more codes showed up, and some of their parents. Do we have any parents willing to come forward? Parents willing to get arrested? There we go. Parents and relatives. Anyone a relative want to come forward? Any more relatives want to come forward? And soon lots of adults joined in. Lots of adults came forward. Any adults willing to come forward? And finally, 1,000 children and their accomplices were locked up together in a children's jail. And everyone stood up together, and there was no room for anyone else. So, those of you up here with me now, I want you to imagine and remember with me some of the things, the awful thing Bull Connor and his people did to try and get protesters to turn back. He had turned big police dogs loose and allowed them to bite people. He had turned on fire hoses that were so strong, the force of the water could strip the bark off trees. Those hoses pushed children all the way down the streets. People all over the country and all over the world saw the pictures of the dogs, the fire hoses, and the children, and they were furious. Everyone be furious. Yeah, more! Be angry! That's right. And everyone, even the white people who were allowed to buy things in the shops, didn't want to go downtown because Bull Connor had made it so scary. So they were getting embarrassed, and they weren't getting to do their shopping, and they decided to change things. Sometimes you got to embarrass people, right? You got to make them uncomfortable. Yeah. You got to do what they tell you is inappropriate. A short time later, the black people and white people of Birmingham made a pact to desegregate the city and let everyone go to the same places. Hooray! Today, when many people tell this story, many talk about Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., right? But we should also remember the thousands of brave children and teenagers and their accomplices. All the troublemakers whose courage helped to defeat Bull Connor and end segregation in Birmingham and the rest of the United States. And in that spirit, let us sing the song created by Unitarian Universalist Pete Seeger and his friends at the Highlander Center, or Rosa Parks joint. So everyone please rise in body, voice, or spirit, and we're going to sing, "We Shall Overcome."
We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. Let's join hands. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we'll walk hand in hand someday. We shall all be free. We shall all be free. We shall all be free someday. Oh,
Before announcements, we have an invitation to the offering. John Saxton writes that the light of our chalice would soon flicker and die without the oil that nourishes its flame. And just as this flame cannot burn without oil, this religious community cannot survive or thrive without the financial as well as the personal support of its members and friends, the oil that keeps the flame of our liberal religious faith alive and fuels the shared mission and ministry of this fellowship. Now let us now give freely and generously an offering to sustain and strengthen our shared religious community. A community of memory, hope, faith, and love, for we now are the keepers of its flame that burns for justice, its dream of beloved community, and its vision of a world made whole. There are many ways to make a gift to UUCSS to help make this grand vision of our faith and the emerging vision of our congregation real. If you are in person, you can also place your offering in one of the offering plates as it's passed around in just a moment. And the other ways to give are detailed on the slide that you can see on the screens. The offering will now be gratefully given and received.
Good morning. My name is Catherine Buckler, and I am privileged to be the president of your board of trustees. My pronouns are she and her, and I aspire, and I hope you all join me in aspiring to be a worthy accomplice. Thank you for that wonderful sermon. We gather in person and on Zoom for worship every Sunday morning here at UUCSS. But our church is not only the organization that puts together these services, we are a vibrant collective of volunteers and staff. We are part of the wider Silver Spring community. We are a member of the Unitarian Universalist Association and a part of the global UU denomination. Today we have 3 announcements. UU Minister Reverend Anthony McCarr, hopefully I'm saying that right, compares worship to a shared meal where dish after dish of soul food is served up and we dig in. UCSS got to experience some different soul food dishes when Jewish and pagan members of our congregation shared their Hanukkah and winter solstice celebrations in 2 of our December Sunday services. But we don't have to stop there. Reverend Kristen will host a worship planning open house on Sunday, January 21st, that's next weekend, I believe, after the service. The nursery will remain open that day until 1:30, and light refreshments will be provided so that everyone can participate in this opportunity to give your input for upcoming worship. Our ministers and the worship committee are eager to collaborate with people interested in sharing traditions, holidays, and practices from their cultural or religious roots, and also learning what topics and burning questions you hope future services will address. Again, that's Sunday, January 21st, from noon to 1:30. Hope to see you there. Number 2, the deadline for our t-shirt design contest has been extended for a month. Nope.
To the end of the month.
To the end of the month, which is kind of close to a month if you think about it. Not too much. Okay. So if you have an idea for a shirt that expresses our UU values, something you and other Unitarian Universalists could wear to school or to a protest or on the bus, you still have a couple of weeks to get that design into Reverend Caitlin. There are 2 categories in this contest. For adults and 1 for children or youth. So please get your sketches, ideas, thoughts together for t-shirts into Reverend Caitlin at AMSG, the Assistant Minister for Spiritual Growth, AMSG at uucss.org. Number 3, finally, we are going to have a cupcake baking contest in February, and Reverend Kristen needs some people to help make it happen. It's snowing. It's the sprinkles for the cupcakes. If you want to join Reverend Kristen in plotting and planning this fun event, please send her an email at minister@uucss.org. Thank you for your attention.
Catherine, you forgot one message. One announcement. Pathways to Membership, February 10th.
There's a Pathways to Membership class, February 10th, for those of you who are interested in learning about how to become a member here in our wonderful congregation. Thanks.
Please join me in the words of our chalice lighting extinguishing. Carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again. My InReach group knows that I never can remember the words.
Our closing hymn is known as the Black National Anthem, and it is, in the words of Aisha Ansano, who Reverend Caitlin mentioned before, a very, very powerful song. But it's often sung without context, and at times it's sung without a lot of intentionality. These are Aisha's words I'm going to read. It's easy to open the hymnal and sing along without necessarily processing what we're saying, what the words we're really saying mean. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Bitter the chastening rod felt in the days when hope unborn has died. And we have come over a way that with tears has been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered. This song deserves to be sung with attention. if you listen to those words. It is a song that starkly names the horrors and violence of racism in this country, and it is a song that should make us uncomfortable. Uncomfortable with the history that it calls upon, uncomfortable with the fact that the struggle for racial justice continues, always, and has not come quite so far as it should have by now. And how can anyone sing the words, treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered, without a deep, deep discomfort, right? So when we sing this song, will you join me in singing with intentionality? Yes. Okay? Will you join me in the deep discomfort that I will be feeling in singing those words? Yes. Discomfort with the pain and horror that those words refer back to, and discomfort with the fact that those words do not only refer to a distant history, but also to what is happening now. Yes. Will you commit to sitting with your own discomfort? Yes. And then, will you tap into that discomfort and do something? Yes. I know you all are really great for doing. Will you lift your voice now and sing until earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty? Will we rise in body and spirit? We'll hear a brief intro of that. Lift every voice and sing. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dawn past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun, day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road, stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn has died. Yet with a steady beat, yet with our weary feet, come to the place for which our heart is signed. We have come over a way that the tear has been won. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out of the gloomy past to the at last, where the gleam of our bright star is cast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, though thou hast brought us thus far on the way, now who has known thy might, let us into the light, keep us forever in the path we brave. Lest our feet stray from the places of God where we met ye. Let our hearts, drunk with the wine of the Lord, we forget thee. Shadow beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land.
In the words of Bayard Rustin, the proof that one truly believes is in action. I look forward to hearing how you will make good trouble, dear ones, how you will be accomplices and agents of justice. Reminder that if you want to be a part of our youth and children being accomplices and agents of justice, we are always looking for adult accomplices to our children and youth programming. And this week, I hope you will find some time to dwell in the stories of troublemakers of the past, dipping your toes into their colorful lives for inspiration, whether that's through a museum visit, watching a film, reading some of their writing like Letter from a Birmingham Jail, or whatever works for you. Dear ones, we know we can do wild and dangerous things because we have done them before. Our worship now has ended, and our service begins.
Thank you.